Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the film Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. And no, it's not a movie about the two brands competing with another. That's just the name that these two characters give themselves. In fact, the opening of the movie even has like a text crawl that says, this is not associated with the brand names, with the brand Harley Davidson or Marlboro cigarettes. Enjoy the show. This is a movie that has earned a cult following over the years, and I can definitely see why. Because it's a fun movie. Is it great? Nah, it's not a classic. It's not a film I consider a great movie by any means. But it's an enjoyable film with two enjoyable leads, some good performances by the cast, some decent bits of action. I don't think it's as bad as the critics make it out to be. This movie was absolutely mercilessly beaten by critics when it came out. It was released in August of 1991. It pretty much came and went. It was made for a budget of $23 million and only made $7 million in the US. So after that, after its release in 91, then it kind of rode off into semi-obscurity until it kind of found new life on home video. Because this film does have quite its fair share of fans. The movie has a 6 out of 10 on IMDb, which is not the highest rating, but for IMDb, that's a pretty decent rating. Um, so there definitely is a fan base for this film, and I can see why. It's a fun movie. Mickey Rourke and Don Johnson, they work well with one another. They have great chemistry. Uh, Even though apparently they hated each other while working on the movie, and to this day will refuse to work on a film with one another. It doesn't show on the screen. Uh, and I like the idea behind it. I like the idea of these two guys in a not so distant future. And they're these two bikers who are best buds, best pals, and they team up and have a sort of an adventure together. I like these two characters, and that's one of the main reasons why I like the film, is because of Mickey Rourke and Don Johnson. These aren't like amazing performances or anything, but that's not really what this film requires. This film isn't high art. It's not anything like that, but it knows it. It's the type of movie you sit back with a beer and a bag of chips, or a soda, a can of soda and some chips or popcorn or whatever you like, and just sit back, turn your brain off, and enjoy. That's really what this type of movie is. It's nothing extraordinary. It's not, oh wow, it's not really, it doesn't say anything about society. But sometimes you just want to sit back and enjoy a movie like this, and it's a rather enjoyable film. It's written by Don Michael Paul, who was one of the stars in Rolling Vengeance, and he would also go on to direct Half Past Dead and other crappy films like Kindergarten Cop 2. So this might be one of his best associations that he has with a film ever, because I can't really think of that many. I mean, I think he's written a few other films, and of course, he was in Rolling Vengeance, and I don't mind that film, but I definitely would say I like Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man, more than Rolling Vengeance. It's directed by Simon Wincer, who hasn't really directed a lot. I mean, he helped produce Daryl, and he would go on to direct Lightning Jack, I believe. He was produced Lightning Jack, and I know he directed more films. It's not showing writer other. Why are they not listing what he directed on Wikipedia? That's just weird. Somebody needs to edit that, apparently. So, for the films that he's directed films like Operation Dumbo Drop, The Phantom. That's the one I remember him probably the most for, is The Phantom. He also directed Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, which isn't that great. And he also directed Daryl, and I did enjoy Daryl. And he did Quigley Down Under, which I think is really underrated. That's a pretty solid film. He also did Free Willy, so he's directed a handful of good movies. He's also directed some stinkers. But, he's actually not that bad in terms of his directorial efforts, it seems like. So you do a lot worse than Simon Wincer when it comes to uh, a filmography for directors. It has a score by Basil Polidoris, which for some reason is not available at all, not on CD, not on digital, not anywhere. And I think that's really too bad because it's honestly it's a great score. I like the twang it has. I like the mix of country and rock and orchestra. And it's another great score, another spectacular score from a spectacular score composer in Basil Polidoris, who is greatly missed. Now, the movie also features some really amazing and admirable production design by Paul Peters. I love the production design in this film. It's slick, it's stylish, but it has a certain down-home vibe to it that really speaks to me. I really like it. It's really cool. And there's also sort of a mix of sort of futuristic tech, or not really tech, but futuristic art direction mixed in with some old school stuff. So the movie, because of that, it has a comic book feel to it. It kind of feels like a comic book movie. It kind of plays out like a comic book movie. You got these villains who don't say that much, and they wear these trench coats that are made out of Kevlar, which honestly makes them look like walking trash bags. But still, I mean, hey, they look like they're straight out. They walk straight out of the pages of a comic book. Now, the film stars Mickey Rourke as Harley Davidson, John Johnson as the Marlboro Man, Chelsea Field as Virginia Slim, who is a love interest for John Johnson's character. Daniel Baldwin, in one of the few films that he's in that isn't a total piece of shit, plays plays one of the guys who wears a trench coat. It's called Alexander. Giancarlo Esposito plays Jimmy Giles, who is one of the guys who works for and helps out at this bar that is run by the old man, played by Julius Harris. You also have Vanessa Williams, who plays a character named Lulu Daniels, who's a singer at this bar slash club, and you also have Big John Studd from WWF as the boyfriend of Vanessa Williams' character, Jack Daniels. And he's also friends with Mickey Rourke's character and Don Johnson. And I actually liked Big John Studd. I thought he was fine. This is probably his best acting performance out of his entire career. He wasn't really in a lot of films, but I thought he was good here. He had a presence, he had personality. He wasn't that bad of an actor, although he wasn't asked to act that much or have that many lines. So he was fine with what he had to work with and what he was asked to do. There was a fun little scene there's even arm wrestling in it. He's arm wrestling some guy and reminded me Over the Top, which is cool, and because I love that movie. And then there was actually some nice. There's a cool scene where he's essentially wrestling Mickey Rourke and throws him around like a rag doll. He and a bunch of other people, though, they get shot down later, and I honestly think that was a bit. You can see that this film has buzzkill moments where it's really kind of harsh in my vibe. It's I'm really enjoying it. It's killing my buzz, and it's like, oh, it kind of reminds me of Young Guns too in some ways, where it's like, oh yeah, you introduce these characters which are fun, and Big John Studd, and then they get shot down, and then you're just like, I mean, it doesn't really go anywhere either, because I guess it's kind of revenge, but the club gets torn to bits, and it's never really mentioned again, the bar, so it's like, that was just a little subplot that just went nowhere, but really it was the main reason why the whole conflict happens in the first place. So the fact that was kind of left out was just left on the wayside by the end of the movie was disappointing. And honestly, the ending was disappointing, period. It felt rushed. Don Michael Paul is not the greatest screenwriter in the world, and it shows. Because I personally feel he absolutely could have written a much better ending, and there could have been more to the film than there is. But performance-wise, people do fine. You even have Tom Sizemore, who plays this villain. He's pretty much the main villain of the piece. He's this leader of this bank. This bank who is actually selling this drug called Crystal Dream on the side, and this bank is called the Great Trust Bank. And he has a right-hand woman in Tia Carrere in one of her earliest roles. And so she's always nice to look at. And Tom Sizemore was fine. He just wasn't in the film that much. So most of the time you just have these generic trench coat bad guys who show up and hunt Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man and shoot guns, and it's just I don't know, it's just kind of, the film honestly could have done a lot better in the action department. That's one of the things that, see, I enjoy the film, but ultimately I would say it's above average, because for an action film it doesn't really have a lot of memorable action sequences. I mean, you have the stuff with the trench coat guys and they're firing a million rounds per minute, but it doesn't really have much of an impact. And then you have a few shootouts with Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man, but Harley can't shoot worth a shit. Marlboro Man is the only one who can shoot anything, but Harley can fight, and they show that in the beginning, but then they don't really go back to it, which is disappointing. They show him getting in a fight with these robbers at a convenience store and kicking their asses, and then you show him getting in a rough and tumble bar fight with Big John Studd, and then they don't even go back to it. He never really gets in another fight for the rest of the film. He doesn't fight Tom Sizemore. He doesn't fight the henchmen. He doesn't do any of that. There's no hand-to-hand stuff. There's no boxing, which would really use Mickey Rourke's strengths. And it's just these kind of shootouts at the end, which are, I'll shoot for the head in the airport graveyard. Not really airport graveyard, but in the airplane graveyard, which is a nice location, but it's like, and it's bloody, but it's just kind of not really that much of it. It's not really exciting or anything. It's just like pot shots to the head, and it's kind of like, and Mickey Rourke can't shoot worth a shit, and then it leads to the climax where it's a bit disappointing as to how Tom Sizemore's character ends up dying. So that's definitely something that holds the film back. It really needed to go full throttle on the action, and it does not do that. Also, there needed to be more motorcycle chases and more car chases and more stuff like that. I don't understand Variety saying here, hotly staged bike chases. Where? There's not really that many bike chases in this. There's maybe one, but it's a cop-out, because it's a cop chasing after Marlboro, but then you find out it's his girlfriend. So there really isn't any real bike chases in this movie. At least none that are that memorable. So that's definitely something that the film could have used. Also, like I said, the ending needed to be more of a satisfying conclusion to the story, because it's not very satisfying. It's just, these two, the Harley Davidson Marlboro Man, they go off their separate ways, and then the bar where they were raised just pretty much just gets left up in the air. Like, who gives a shit? What's going on with Vanessa Williams' character? Her husband is dead. Oh, who cares? No, we're not even going to go back to that. It's just kind of like, why were you making this the big deal? Because the main conflict, folks, is the bar is going to get bought out by the Great Trust Bank, and because they can't afford their lease, because the lease is like $2.5 million, and they can't afford it. So, since this is a place where Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man were raised and born and raised, and basically kept off the street by the owner, they decide to, okay, we're going to save the bar by robbing a bank. They rob the bank, the Great Trust Bank, and they end up stealing drugs. So it's not the money. So then they decide, okay, we're going to try to make a deal to exchange the drugs for money, and then it leads to conflict with the trench coat guys, and then it leads to Harley Davidson Marlboro Man's buddies, Big John Studd and the other guy and their mentor getting shot in the club and in the bar pretty much getting torn to shit, and then that's it. And then the rest of the film is just Harley and the Marlboro Man going off on trying to, they're trying to live their lives and escape and get out of town and try to stay one step ahead of the trench coats. and then ultimately leads to them going up and confronting because they're going to give the money back or something, and they want to get revenge for their fallen brothers, for their friends, and it leads to a climax that's pretty. You have an awesome cameo by Robert Ginty, the exterminator, who shows up in a helicopter with a minigun and just lays waste to the entire high, the top floor of this high rise. And then you have this sort of, it's kind of played for laughs, I guess, where Tom Sizemore's character is holding on to Marlboro's boot, and then his boot falls apart, and then he falls to his death. It's just kind of like, I would have preferred if they shot him out the window like RoboCop, or Mickey Rourke got in a fight with him, and then Marlboro shot him with a gun or something. So that was a bit disappointing. So, but ultimately, I do enjoy the film. I think it's a fun movie. It's a fun film. It's got some nice, fun bits of little bits of action when it is there. I do enjoy, but mainly where the film's strong suits are is with the two leads, with Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. Their interactions with each other and the dialogue. I mean, lines like this from Harley: It's better to be dead and cool than alive and uncool. Marlboro is like, Harley, if you were shooting for shit, you wouldn't get a whiff. And this repeated line, which I do enjoy. It's one of my favorites, actually. Where Marlboro's trying to teach Harley how to shoot a gun, and he's like, squeeze the trigger. Don't yank it. It's not your dick. and so that's some fun stuff. And the whole scene where they have to jump. They jump off the top. It's actually off the roof of a hotel into a pool, which is a definite reference to Butch and Sundance. So this film, and speaking of that, this movie in a lot of ways is a Western. It's an urban Western. It takes place in a city, but you have these are two cowboys. These are two outlaws. It's like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And this film even has multiple scenes in it that are homages to that film. That particular scene, we're going to jump, and they jump, and Marlboro is like, I hate you, Harley! Oh, shit! And Marlboro has this saying that he always says when he talks about his dad, his old man. He has these a couple sayings that I do like. Is like, my old man told me before he left this shitty world, never chase buses or women. You'll always be left behind. My old man told me before he left this shitty world, the right woman can make you, and the wrong woman can break you. And this one, and then there's this line that I also enjoy where Marlboro is talking to Harley, and he's telling him, because you're wasting all this money and wasting these bullets because you're such a shitty shot. It's like, that gun costs about $2 every time you fire it. That's $2 a bullet. Well, how many did I hit? You spent $12 and you didn't hit a goddamn thing. I nailed one and it cost about $4.25. So, I mean, the dialogue is actually pretty clever, and it's memorable. I can see why a lot of people actually remember this movie and quote the film, because it is a quotable movie in that aspect. He's going to take my girl, I'm going to take his bike. So, I mean, there's plenty of just fun lines like that in the movie. And even the interactions between each other, even when they're not saying a word, is fun. So there's definite chemistry between these two, between Don Johnson and Mickey Rourke, and that makes it for an entertaining movie despite its flaws, which it does have a few. Now, one thing that, other than those two, that really stands out to me with this movie is the soundtrack. I love this soundtrack. I mean, from the opening credits, the movie opens up and you got this badass opening scene, one of the most badass opening scenes for any film I can think of, because it's got this montage of Mickey Rourke getting ready to get on his bike and riding around to Wanted Dead or Alive by Bon Jovi. And it just fits like a glove, like a leather glove, and it's such an awesome sequence. It's a great way to open up the film. And then throughout the rest of the movie, you have good songs too. I mean, that's one of the things that I always remembered from this film when I saw it for the first time with my dad years ago. So I remember, the Bon Jovi song, which has always been one of my favorite songs, and other songs too, like "The Bigger They Come, The Harder They Fall" by Peter Frampton and Steve Marriott. Uh, "Let's Work Together" by the Kentucky Headhunters, which was actually in D2 The Mighty Ducks. I remember that. But "Ride With Me" is the one that definitely did leave an impression on me out of all of the songs. And the film actually ends with "Ride With Me" by Black Eyed Susan. And that's actually one of my most viewed videos on my channel. Is I posted the song "Ride With Me" so people can listen to it. I think it's a great song. And it's a nice little ballad, so to speak, about, bikers. So, I mean, this film's got bikers, it's got babes, it's got bullets, it's got beer, it's got Big John Stud. It could use more action. It could have a better ending, where things are tied up better. Like, I would have Mickey Rourke and Don Johnson's characters. I would have them fix up the bar and co-own it or something. That's how I would have it end. They would stay together. They would fix up the bar. Mickey Rourke's character, Harley Davidson, would get together with Vanessa Williams' character because he's always had a crush on her. And you'd have Marlboro Man co-running the bar with Chelsea Field, with Virginia Slim. That's honestly how I would end the film. I think it would be much more satisfying. Because what you get is, I mean, I don't mind Don Johnson getting back on the bull and stuff like that. But the whole thing, the two pals leaving, splitting apart from each other, and Harley getting on his motorcycle and picking up some random chick and then driving off into the sunset, not really the most satisfying ending. Doesn't help either. The climax is pretty anticlimactic. Other than the awesome scene with Robert Ginty shooting up the place, the whole confrontation with the villain, with Tom Sizemore, was kind of lame. But anyway, I still like the film. I definitely do not think it's nearly as bad as its reputation suggests. I know it gets like a really low rating on Rotten Tomatoes, like a 20-something% or something. Yeah, 24%. And it's a movie that even Simon Wincer said was a turd. He said it was a piece of shit. I disagree. And even Mickey Rourke said he signed on to the film purely for financial reasons. And he said it made him feel like a sellout and fueled his descent into self-loathing in the mid-1990s. Mickey, you've been in much worse movies than Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. This is actually one of my favorite films that he's in, and one of my favorite roles from Mickey is as Harley Davidson. Costume design is great too, by Richard Schisler. Especially love that jacket that Mickey wears in the film. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, except if I was going to rate it out of 5 stars, I'd give it 3.5 out of 5. It's an above average fun movie. You got some fun dialogue. You got these fun characters and Harley Davidson and Marlboro Man. But it needs a little bit more action, more gunplay, more fisticuffs, more car chases, more bike chases, and a more explosive climax, a more satisfying climax, and a better ending that doesn't feel rushed or like there's too many loose ends. But other than that, I don't have I don't have anything else really to say about the film, except if it sounds interesting to you and it's a movie that you've heard about but never saw because of the reputation it gets, I would recommend, giving it a watch one time. Pop it in. Like I said, pop open a cold one, pop this in, pop some snacks in your mouth, and turn your brain off and just just sit back and enjoy. Because it's a big, dumb, loud movie. It's not smart. It's not intelligent, but it's not trying to be that way. So it's it is what it is. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys later. See ya.